I might have said in the heat of the moment during one of these debates, I want to raise the minimum wage, so sue me when I do. But I didn't think they were going to take it literally.
The Constitution makes it clear that the president's job is to faithfully execute the laws. In my view, the president has not faithfully executed the laws.
President Obama and House Speaker Boehner facing off this week in a battle over the separation of powers. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Brit Hume, Fox News senior political analyst. Julie Pace, who covers the White House for the Associated Press. GOP strategist Karl Rove and USA Today columnist Kirsten Powers. Brit, big picture. Has Barack Obama gone beyond some of his predecessors in his exercise of executive powers?
I think unmistakably so. We hate, presidents do tend to stretch these things and go as far as they can. But when you get shut down 9-0 by the Supreme Court, it ought to be a pretty clear warning that you're out of bounds here, buddy. And now we look at these instances such as those that you cited in the previous segment where the president has simply chosen to postpone or ignore explicit provisions of the law, something that I think constitutionally he is not empowered to do, and I think it's pretty obvious. The question, of course, is whether a suit by one house of Congress will find standing in a court so that the court will act, the high court will act on this.
Ever since the president's reelection, he has made it clear that if Congress blocks him, he is going to act on his own. Here's one of his statements.
I'm going to be working with Congress where I can to accomplish this. But I'm also going to act on my own if Congress is deadlocked. I've got a pen to take executive actions where Congress won't, and I've got a telephone to rally folks around the country on this mission.
Julie, are they at all worried at the White House about the pushback they got this week, both from the House in the form of this threatened and I think almost certain lawsuit from House Republicans, and also by the 9-0 decision in the Supreme Court? Or do they think that they can continue on this path with little consequence?
I think the reaction is different. I'd split the difference between the Supreme Court and the Boehner threat of a lawsuit. With Boehner, I think they feel like they can continue to go out and say that this is a stunt. It plays into what we already know is a bad relationship between the White House and the House GOP. So they think that this is just another notch. They don't think this changes the argument there at all. The Supreme Court decision, though, I think is a bit different because it was unanimous, which I think was surprising to some people. And there's a difference between the House GOP, which is a standard group opposing the president saying something, and the Supreme Court saying something unanimously. And it also, I think, actually could have an impact on some decisions that the National Labor Relations Board made.
Karl, I think it's fair to say you worked at a White House that took a pretty expansive view of executive powers, whether it was signing statements by President Bush when he was signing bills into law or the way that he waged the war on terror. Can you honestly say that you believe this president is going further than President Bush did in exercising his executive power?
Absolutely. First of all, let's divorce international. The president is given under the Constitution broad authority in waging war, independent of the Congress. But when it comes to the execution of the laws passed by Congress, the statutes, a president must first and foremost look, whenever they take an executive action, an executive order, for example, they must look for, is there a statutory basis to do so? I remember plenty of times as we discussed executive orders, the counsel's office and other legal authorities inside the administration were weighing in on what was the statutory authority for the president to take his action. One instance was we reviewed, did the president have authority to take a class of individuals and exempt them from the enforcement of immigration laws? And the lawyers came back and said you have an ability to exempt individuals but no ability to exempt a class. And yet this president has exempted a class of people from enforcement of immigration laws. Where I've actually read the Affordable Care Act, and I can find little or no authority at all for those 39 exemptions that he's gotten. There's no statutory authority in the law that says the president can delay the individual mandate, delay the employer mandate.
Well, what about this argument that you hear from Congresswoman Becerra, but this is the implementation of the law?
Look, the Constitution says, Article 1, the legislative branch is the Congress. The legislative power is embodied in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. It does not say the legislative power is shared between the president and the Congress. Now, there's been this tension for 200 and some odd years, but this president, again, he delayed in the employer mandate, not only the employer mandate, but the tax that is collected as a result of that. This is imperial power. This is George III. This is some monarch to say, you know, I am the law. And frankly, it's the House suit, which will not be a Republican suit. It will be a suit on behalf of the institution of the House saying our authority under the first article of the Constitution is being impaired by the President's action. I think it's going to be important for the country over the long term.
We asked you for questions for the panel, and we got this from Matthew Murray on Twitter. If Boehner wins lawsuit, will Obama adhere to the decision? How are courts going to enforce if he doesn't? Kirsten, how do you answer, Matthew?
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court obviously doesn't have an army to enforce decisions, but the president has to comply with decisions of the Supreme Court. And I am actually a surprising supporter of the Boehner lawsuit if he in fact does have standing, because I think that the administration has clearly been shut down by the Supreme Court already on various decisions, and I think that they have showed a somewhat hostility to certain things, such as supporting this buffer zone that the Supreme Court just struck down in Massachusetts. And if you listen to what Congressman Becerra was saying when he was answering your questions, is he never once argued the law. He never once said, well, actually, these things are constitutional because X, Y, and Z. He just kept saying, well, the people want this, or this is a good thing, and so therefore we should do it. But that's not how it's done. It has to be constitutional. It has to comport with the law. And the fact that they can't argue that is concerning.
To the degree that this becomes an issue, and one could argue whether it will or not, in the November election, Brit, who's got the better side of the argument? The president saying, hey, look, this Congress is blocking me from taking action that you want, that's popular, or the Republicans saying, this guy's out of control?
My guess is that this is an issue that kind of rallies the base in both parties. You know, when the president defies the Republican-controlled House, I think his supporters, by and large, cheer. It was no accident that was a political event where he was making these statements about how they won't do anything, and so I'm going to do things. That sounds good to the ears of those who support him and want him to have his way. On the other hand, I think this evident defiance of the laws as written by him infuriates conservatives and Republicans. So it's, as for those in the middle, I think they are guided by the opinions of the Supreme Court. And when the Supreme Court makes an unmistakable statement of the kind that it did this week, I think that sways public opinion to people who begin to say, well, wait a minute, he may be well off base here.
Julie, 30 seconds left. It looks like with immigration reform falling apart in the Congress, the president may take some more executive action on deportations this summer. Given all of this blowback, do you expect him to go full speed ahead?
I think he will certainly go full speed ahead on some executive actions, but what White House officials have been saying for months is that they actually think that the pool of actions that they could take is far more limited than what you hear immigration reform activists talking about.
All right. We have to take a break here. We'll see you all a little later.